First of all, a little apology to our online friends. At the moment are Joan, Candice, and Kondo Ray. We were diligently turning the laptop on, but turns out it was logged into the wrong account, so other beings were enjoying the retreat, not you. But you were practicing anyway, so that's wonderful. But yeah, so thanks for reaching out, Candice. Yep. And secondly, just a little formy thing. It's nice to walk together in the Kenyan times. So you might be inside walking together in a rectangle, clockwise. Or you might be out on the front porch walking around that concrete pad together, also clockwise. Or maybe you go to the bathroom and end up in the lobby walking clockwise. So it's nice to walk together. Well, I'm so grateful that we get to do this together, aren't you? That we are working together with such heart to create this time of practice and quiet. And I was surprised last night and this morning even more. I could just see and feel things that I don't usually see and feel so clearly, maybe especially this week. Feel into the deep question of our practice, which is, how do we practice with this, whatever this is? To remember that it's actually about how I conduct myself and how I think and how I approach and how I tune in. It's not about my big ideas in my head, it's about heart, body, mind in the bigger sense that the Buddhists talk about mind, the mind that is the whole universe, that I am lucky to get to participate in. Somehow I see and feel something and it's hard to talk about, and the part of me that thinks I should do it right is already self-conscious, like, you're not saying this right. But there's something I touch, and maybe you do too, in Sesshin. It's just right there all the time, but I lose track of it. Something about presence, something about connection, something about just being. And that it's the answer, It's the answer to this unanswerable question, how do I live? How do we live? How do we practice? How do we respond? How can we be bodhisattvas? In Sesshin, you can feel that a little more. Feel the response. And of course, that's hard to talk about, because it's not a talking about kind of thing. It's easy to notice the unhelpful ways that we respond to this life, right? Those are always within and around us. And maybe they were strong this week, the unhelpful, disconnected ways. Judgment, anger, disgust. What's wrong with those people? And that sort of desperate desire to get it, what's going on? To make sense of it all. How the mind spins and churns, losing traction, gaining traction, going down side roads, trying to figure it out. I do notice that my mind's attempt to figure things out, sometimes there's responses in that figuring out space that do feel a little better, maybe truer. latest favorite about this week, which when it came into my head, I was quite certain was absolutely correct, is to be in awe of our powerful human need to be seen, The need to feel like others get you. And that may be especially a big need with a leader. The leader gets you, understands, sees you. And that this is incredibly powerful. So I had this idea, it's a good theory. It's so powerful maybe that it doesn't matter all that much what said leader or other person actually says or does or anything like details like that. It's just details. That you feel seen, you feel belonging. Anyway, it's a nice theory. Better than all the really negative ones. But of course, that's all it is. Theory and ideas, projections, assumptions, and beliefs. In the mind's desperate yearning to know what's going on. And to have a universe that's predictable, where we know what's going to happen. And in alignment with our opinions, always, of course, too. Somehow, Sesshin is a particularly helpful situation to feel the fragility and emptiness, provisionalness of all such ideas and theories. They're just like clouds, you can see right through them. They're there. Maybe they're justified, I don't know. Probably a cloud feels justified. Like, hey man, the dew point is what it is. I'm a cloud now. Get over it. But just that, as substantial as a cloud. The way Sesshin helps us move our attention out of the cloud to ground, to here, to with instead of apart, to connected instead of divided. And to taking responsibility instead of complaining. Or investing in some idea that things should be other than they are. Buddha pretty much built an entire world religion on that mistake, right? The wish that things are other than they are. And we're living into that now. Thanks, Buddha. So I found myself being more aware and more curious, and I'm sure it's just a few layers into the onion, around, well, how am I being right now? How am I showing up? It doesn't really matter if people know what I'm thinking. We do read each other pretty well, though. But how about me? Am I a kind person right now? A warm person? A loving person? An open person, a supportive person. And in Sesshin, I think the quiet really helps us see that it's not just what we do that matters. We have that fallacy in our Western discourse that your thoughts are your own private affair. As long as you behave fine, you can think anything you want. Nobody can tell you what to think. In the quiet of Sesshin, we can see that that really matters. How we think. How we respond to these persuasive clouds. And I think the weirdest thing of all is that the stillness and support of Sesshin, sooner or later cracks our hearts wide open, which can be overwhelming too. Why would that be? It doesn't make any rational sense. This way of practicing would open our hearts. And all that stuff I just said is not just ideas and goals. It's an experience of kindness, an experience of warmth, an experience of love, and an experience of how painful it is to invest in a judgment, a deprecation, a meanness, even in our minds. Even in areas where we feel completely justified. Maybe then it's even worse. And after a while, I think in Sesshin too, curiosity swells. Closed becomes open. You can really feel that you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen in the next moment, much less the next 4 years. And then all we can do is practice right here and right now. We were gifted this beautiful archetype, goal, vision of the Bodhisattva. It's really a beautiful vision, isn't it? Beings that love the world, never give up, always try to help, are humble, are committed, are feeling it, are crying and laughing, and feeling the pain and the joy of this world. And of course, many words have been written and said about how you're supposed to be a bodhisattva. I was returning to Shantideva's little manual, it's a big manual on this recently, if you've ever studied Shantideva's Bodhicharyavatara, the way of the Bodhisattva. There's a lot you could say about it, and think about it, and write about it. But what I'm just so appreciating and new about Sesshin is it helps us feel about it, which is where the magic is. And I've always appreciated the way Sesshin sets us up for funny little problems, that actually don't matter. Like where you walk during Kinhin, that doesn't matter. Who cares? You're walking mindfully. You don't need some authority figure telling you, walk over there and over there. And so maybe somebody had a reaction just now when I said that, That's good. That's good. And we can practice with our reactivity and watch it dissolve and watch love come flooding back in. So that's what all the little rules are about, Of course, sometimes that goes sideways, but that's what it's about. Feeling into our bodhisattva life together. And it's humbling, isn't it? I myself notice how I can be so internally lazy about all this. Externally, I guess I don't look lazy, I'm always working, but trying to not do that. But internally, I do notice, I remember the potential of our bodhisattva life, how easy I could just kind of park in my comfort as a privileged guy with a blessed life, pretty protected from all the problems. And then I remember how stale that is, how unsatisfying actually ultimately that is, Sometimes I sit around with my journal and imagine, every day I will play guitar, do calligraphy, Go on a wonderful walk in nature with Raisel. Have no nasty emails at all. Everything will be so great one day. We come to Sesshin, remember, yeah, it's all true, but it's not. The great joy is in rolling up our sleeves and getting into the mess and finally getting around to that volunteer position with our unhoused friends, whatever it is. To get in there and really help is the satisfying life. You remember that, you feel that. So I'm grateful. I know it's not simple, and no matter what I say, it's not going to be quite it. But that this week of all weeks, we get to experience this, each in our own way. You will have a different way of experiencing this and talking about it. If they made you give a Dharma talk, count your blessings. But we all get to be touched and touch each other in the love and connection and groundedness of Sesshin. What could be more helpful? Because it's a topsy-turvy world, you know. And the other thing Sesshin really concretely helps me with is to appreciate impermanence a little more deeply. It's in all the teachings right from the beginning, but it's pretty easy to say, yeah, everyone knows that. Duh. Right? But then you watch your mind in Sesshin, and you watch the way you're predicting things and rigidifying things and thinking, what's what and what's going to happen next, And you realize, that's denying impermanence, denying the fluidity of this world. And you see in little and big ways in Sesshin how totally unpredictable everything is. It's not that our ideas of the future, whether it's the next hour or the next year or 4 years, are not total bokum. They're based on something, past experience, things we've observed, our elaborate theories of who we are and what the world is. But as we pay attention through our practice, especially here, we see, oh, no, it didn't go that way. It went this other way. How unexpected. What a surprise. How delightful, how confusing, how troubling, but a surprise. It's unexpected. Of course, everything is unexpected, right? Anything you expect is just what you're projecting into the future. So there literally cannot be another moment that's what you expected, right? That's impossible. So we learn something about flexibility and humility. And little by little, through exposure therapy, we get more comfortable, more able to be with the radical uncertainty of the universe without letting it freeze us up so much and freak us out. And in the radical nature of impermanence, there's also great infinite possibility too. In addition to the infinite tragedies, that it didn't go the way we expected. And our Buddhist ancestors have been studying this for a long time. So it's on us now to continue this exploration. Dogen told the monks at Eiheiji one time, the ancestral teachers have their skillful means. In the 7th tumble, the 8th downfall is still not finished. Zen sitting cushions and monks' staffs at this time become lotuses in the fire. This was an entire Dharma talk. We give these really short formal talks called Jodo. Here's the talk again. The ancestral teachers have this skillful means in the 7th tumble and the 8th downfall is still not finished. Zen sitting cushions and monks' staffs become lotuses in the fire. So tumbles and downfalls are the political and economic and natural disasters of the day. and that they're always happening. Even before the last one's not even finished, the seventh tumble is still happening, and here comes the eighth downfall. And Dogen lived in a Japan full of strong men. Samurai, for goodness sakes, were running the place. And there was incredible societal striation, incredible income disparity, relative order for a while, and then total chaos and regional wars and conflicts and lots of repression. Luckily, I guess, Dogen had the support of a regional samurai, kind of a minor strongman, who helped him build Eihei-ji, protected that area to create a sense of peace. A means peace, Eihei-ji, place of peace, temple, but peace at a cost. But good and bad, it was clear from the history that Dogen remained beholden and indebted to this samurai's name was Hatano Yoshiki. After running Eihei-ji for about 8 years, Lord Hatano, who was then in the sort of secondary capital of Kamakura, a long ways away when you had to walk, sent a message, "You need to come teach my family." And Dogen dutifully went, So it gets complicated. I don't think Lord Hatana would have taken no for an answer. Maybe there wouldn't have been an Eihei-ji after he got the response. No way. I'm a great Zen abbot. I'm not coming to Kamakura to talk to you and your wife about the Dharma. And when Dogen got back, it's clear that the monks were a bit upset with him, actually, for leaving. So he gave a little longer Dharma talk to explain what he'd been up to. He never quite apologized. I don't know if that was in Dogen's nature, but apology is implied. On the third day of the 8th month of last year, this mountain monk departed from this mountain and went to the Kamakura district of Sagami Prefecture to expound the Dharma for patrons and lay students. On this month of this year, just like last night, I came home to this temple, and this morning I have ascended the seat. This is what he said when he got back that very morning. Some people may have questions about this affair. After traversing many mountains and rivers, I did expound the Dharma for the sake of lay students, which may sound like I value worldly people and take lightly monks. Some may ask whether I presented the Dharma that I have never before expounded and that they have not heard. Like, oh, he's spelling the secrets somewhere else. However, there is no Dharma at all that I have not previously expounded or that you have not heard. I merely explained the Dharma to people who practice virtue, so that those who produce unwholesomeness and degeneracy will stop. That they should practice the cause and experience of the results and throw away the tile and only take up the jewel. Because of this single matter is what this old man Eihei has been able to clarify, express, trust, and practice. Does the Great Assembly want to understand this truth? And then there's an editorial note from his student who wrote this down. After a pause, Dogen said. So in other words, here's what I was doing. Any problems, complaints, questions? Dogen then said, I cannot stand that my tongue has no means to fully express cause and result. How many mistakes I have made in my effort to cultivate the way. Today, how pitiful it is that I have become a water buffalo. This is the phrase for expounding the Dharma. How shall I utter a phrase for returning home to the mountains? This mountain monk was gone for more than half a year. I was like a solitary wheel placed in vast space. Today I return to the mountains, and the clouds are feeling joyful. My great love for the mountains has magnified since before. So a little apologetic there. Glad to be home. And there's something I think that's a little different from our culture in this, to be a little apologetic is a virtue, expression of humility. Even Dogen, not known for expressing a lot of humility in his writings. So the monks were a little mad that he left to go see the patron and left them for 7 months. I don't know who he left in charge. But they would have gotten why it had to happen. Because all educated Buddhists would know about the great repressions of Buddhism that had happened in China in previous centuries. And these monks in Japan in the 13th century would probably at some level be wondering what's going to happen to us. Are the samurai going to continue to tolerate us? Kind of hiding out in our monastery, not paying taxes, not contributing in the usual way. Because they would have known that periodically the Chinese authorities cracked down. There were major repressions in the 5th, 6th, and 9th centuries in China. Thousands of monks thousands of temples closed or destroyed each time. Probably tens or more thousands of monks and nuns driven out of the monasteries, sent to work on farms maybe. Sometimes it was issues of power. The government was worried the monasteries were becoming too powerful. Sometimes just prejudice, eradicating this foreign influence. Other times it was about resources. The monasteries accumulated resources, and you need that if you're running a country. One of them was supposedly mostly about melting down the copper Buddha statues because they didn't have enough copper to make enough coins. And we think in one or more of these, the rakusu was probably invented as like a small version of the monk's robe that you could tuck under your farmer clothes and be a monk secretly and privately. So it's good to remember the histories, I think. As horrible as many of the histories are, keep it all in context. We have plenty to worry about, but probably nothing like that. And that regardless of what's happening in the bigger world, for good or ill, the Buddha field is right at hand. Our practice is right here. Sesshin, helping us to feel that and treasure it and not faff about this weekend. Here's a koan Dogen appreciated along these lines. Zen Master Da'an asked Baijan, this student yearns to understand Buddha. What is it? Da'an's the student here who later would become a Zen master. That's why they wrote it that way. And Baijan was the teacher. The student asks, I yearn to understand Buddha. What is it? Baijan replied, "You are like one searching for the ox while riding the ox." Don asked for clarification. How is it after understanding? Like, what would it be like if I actually got what you're talking about here? How is it after understanding? Baijan replied, "It's like the person returning home, riding an ox." About returning home. Da'an said, "I'm still not clear. How can I protect and care for this from beginning to end?" Baijan said, "It's like the ox herd holding up the staff to watch that the ox doesn't disturb people's seedlings." You gotta guide your ox carefully. From then on, Diane grasped the meaning of this. So we have what we need, and we can ride it home, where we always were. But we gotta be careful. Take care. Dogen wrote a verse of appreciation about this story. "Even with the morning mist thin, his robe gets damp. Where the evening sun sets, birds fly in distant mountains. In this painting, an oxherd returns home amid evening radiance, singing of plum blossoms and the moon above the snow." You can imagine that joyful singing. "Even with morning mist thin, his robe gets damp. Where the evening sun sets, birds fly in distant mountains. In this painting, in this vision, an oxherd returns home amid evening radiance, singing of plum blossoms and the moon above the snow." The other great blessing of Sesshin is doing the Sesshin here. That we can sometimes open our eyes and hearts and ears and feel the incredible aliveness of the planet here. Don't you think? I notice that especially when we emerge from the morning practice time after service. Birds are singing and moving, and herons are jumping off trees, I couldn't even do that. The place just felt so alive. Maybe especially in contrast to being in our cave here for the morning. Go out into the aliveness of this world. My heart flew open as the bird communities sang to us, just like the oxherd returning home in Dogen's poem. And of course, we still always have our judgy relative minds. It's sad but true, isn't it? We need our minds over that thing, Then my next thought is, but it'd be a lot richer here if we hadn't messed up the ecology over the last 100 years. Why do they have all these acres of lawn? Don't they know that's an ecological desert? I had a whole little lecture with somebody or other. And then I was like, stop. Appreciate what's here. Which is true with each other, isn't it? We can really enjoy each other and appreciate our wondrousness. And sure, our judgy thoughts will not necessarily be far behind. But as we shift our focus and our center from head to heart, it's just idle chatter. Doesn't matter much. It'll be there when you need it. But you don't need it now. I'm going to close with another of these little Dharma talks by Dogen. And by the way, Dharma geeks in the audience, I know that you have multiplied over time. I've been reading from the Eihei Koru, Dogen's extensive record put together by his students. most, maybe partly while he was alive, assembled after his death. He recorded hundreds of Dharma talks and poems. It's kind of like a kitchen sink kind of book. There's a little bit of everything. The talks are titled, I don't know if that was by Dogen or by his students who recorded them. This talk is titled, A Timeless Appeal to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas for Clear Skies. Last year and this year, through spring, summer, autumn, and winter, below the heavens, the rains have fallen without cease. The whole population laments as the 5 grains do not ripen. Now Elder Ehe, Dogen, for the sake of saving the land from lamentation, will again make supplications by lifting up the Dharma Hall discourse, praying for clear skies. A discourse that was given by my late teacher, Tiantong Rujing, when he resided at Qinglong Temple. What is the reason? What can we do if Buddha Dharma does not relieve the suffering of human and heavenly beings? Great Assembly, do you understand Ehe's intention? Do you understand my intention? When my late teacher had not yet given a Dharma Hall discourse, all Buddhas and ancestors had not yet given a Dharma Hall discourse. When my late teacher gave a Dharma Hall discourse, all Buddhas of the 3 times and the ancestral teachers of the 6 generations, with all their nostrils and 10,000 eyeballs, at the same time, all gave a Dharma Hall discourse. That's how powerful giving a Dharma talk is. And it could not have been an hour earlier or half an hour later. Today's Dharma discourse by Ehe is also like this. Everything happens exactly as it should. After a pause, Dogen said, without ceasing, 1, 2, and 3 raindrops, drop after drop, fall continuously morning to night, transformed into torrents, so that we can do nothing. The winds and waves overflow through the mountains, rivers, and the great earth. My teacher Rujing sneezed once and said, before one sneeze of this patch-robe monk is finished, the clouds part and the sun appears. My teacher Rujing raised his whisk and said, Great Assembly, look here. The bright, clear sky follows the 8 directions. If the waters continue to fall as before, the houses will float away. Make prostrations to Shakyamuni. Take refuge in Maitreya. Capable of saving the world from its sufferings. Wondrous wisdom power of Avalokiteshvara, I call on you. It doesn't say whether the rains stopped or not. Did you know Dogen made prayers for the weather? So we don't know, in other words, what this practice does or the benefits it will bring. But I think we start to have a lot of faith in it over time and trust. Maybe we can't really explain why, it doesn't totally make sense, but you feel it, But sitting here silently together for a long weekend with such intention in heart changes the world, helps beings. So as we sit and walk and chant, bow, maybe we can remember that we don't know what good we're doing. And whatever happens, we can't anticipate. But that we are Buddha's way. This is Buddha's activity. It's the best thing you can do right now. Thank you.
May our intention equally extend to every being and place with the true merit of Buddha's way. Beings are numberless, I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable, I vow to become it.